In the shadowy world of power, wealth, and secrecy, some connections are too dangerous to acknowledge and too explosive to hide. January 30th, 2026. The U.S. Department of Justice unseals over 3 million pages of documents. Hidden within this massive archive are emails so disturbing they've reignited one of the darkest scandals in royal history. Tonight we uncover the truth about Sarah Ferguson, Jeffrey Epstein, and the threats that bound them together. This is a story about coercion, complicity, and a royal family's desperate attempt to bury the past. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear will shock you. On Friday, January 30th, 2026, federal investigators made public one of the largest document releases in criminal justice history. Over 3 million files connected to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, a decade-long probe into one of the most powerful sex trafficking networks ever uncovered. Epstein, the billionaire financier who died in custody in 2019, maintained relationships with presidents, princes, and Hollywood elite. But buried in page 2847 of subsection G, investigators found something unexpected. A series of private emails between Epstein and Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, spanning from 2009 to 2010. And according to her representatives, these weren't friendly exchanges. They claim Ferguson was threatened, coerced, and manipulated into maintaining contact with a convicted sex offender. But is that the whole story? Sarah Margaret Ferguson, known to the world as Fergie, married Prince Andrew, Duke of York, in July 1986. The wedding was a fairy tale watched by 500 million people worldwide. But the marriage crumbled under intense media scrutiny, financial pressure, and personal indiscretions. They divorced in 1996, though they remained close, living together even years after the split. Ferguson became a tabloid fixture, often photographed in compromising situations, struggling with debt, and desperately trying to maintain her lifestyle. By 2010, she was reportedly millions in debt, her reputation tarnished, and her royal connections strained. That's when Jeffrey Epstein re-entered her life, and according to new documents, he had leverage. March 2010. Jeffrey Epstein sends an email to Sarah Ferguson. The subject line, "Night trip." His message is brief. "Can you come to New York? Would love to see you." Ferguson's response is what has stunned royal observers worldwide. She writes, "Not sure yet, just waiting for Eugenie to come back from a shagging weekend." Let that sink in. This is a mother discussing her 19-year-old daughter's romantic weekend with a man who at that very moment was a registered sex offender. Epstein had been convicted just 18 months earlier for soliciting prostitution from a minor. He served 13 months in a private wing of a county jail, and here was Sarah Ferguson casually corresponding with him, using crude language about her teenage daughter. But here's what makes this even more disturbing. Ferguson's representatives now claim she didn't write this willingly. They say she was being threatened. The March email wasn't an isolated incident. The DOJ documents reveal a pattern of communication that spans months. January 2010, just 6 months after Epstein's release from custody, Ferguson sends him an email calling him a legend and writes, quote, "Just marry me." She repeatedly thanks him for his generosity and emotional support, calling him a spectacular and special friend. In another exchange from 2009, Epstein asks about arranging a VIP London experience. Ferguson responds, "I can organize anything." The documents suggest she may have offered access to Buckingham Palace apartments, though it's unclear if any visit occurred. These aren't the words of someone being coerced. These are the words of someone deeply grateful, possibly dependent. So what changed? Why are her representatives now claiming she was threatened? To understand the threat, we need to look at another set of emails in the DOJ cache. These involve Mike Sitri, a publicist Epstein hired to rehabilitate his image post-conviction. In communications with Sitri, Epstein discusses applying pressure to secure public statements from his powerful friends, statements denying he was a pedophile, vouching for his character. One draft statement, clearly intended for Ferguson to issue, reads, "Jeffrey Epstein is not the monster he's been portrayed as. I've known him for years and can attest to his good character." Ferguson never issued this statement publicly. But according to her current representatives, Epstein threatened to release embarrassing information about her, possibly financial records, possibly more explicit communications, if she didn't comply with his PR demands. They claim several of her affectionate emails were written under this legal and reputational threat. But there's a problem with this narrative. The timeline. In 2010, Sarah Ferguson was drowning in debt. Estimates put her liabilities at over $5 million. Her business ventures had failed. She'd been caught in a cash for access's sting, offering a fake businessman access to Prince Andrew for $500,000. She was desperate, and according to the newly released documents, Epstein provided financial assistance. The exact amounts are redacted, but Ferguson's emails reference opportunities and momentum following meetings connected to Epstein. She credits him with helping boost her business ventures. In a 2011 interview, after Epstein's crimes became impossible to ignore, Ferguson admitted accepting $15,000 from Epstein to pay off a former assistant. She claimed she didn't know the full extent of his crimes and called it a gigantic error of judgment. But these new documents suggest the relationship was far deeper, far longer, and far more financially intertwined than she ever publicly acknowledged. You cannot tell Sarah Ferguson's Epstein story without talking about Prince Andrew. Ferguson's ex-husband maintained his own friendship with Epstein for years, infamously staying at Epstein's Manhattan mansion in 2010 after his conviction. Andrew claimed he went there to break off the friendship in person, a justification that became infamous in his catastrophic 2019 BBC interview. Virginia Giuffre has accused Andrew of sexual assault when she was 17, allegations he denies but ultimately settled out of court for an estimated $12 million in 2022 without admitting liability. The DOJ documents reveal that Andrew and Ferguson, despite their divorce, operated in Epstein's orbit simultaneously. A July 2010 email shows Epstein asking Ferguson if Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie could greet a visitor while in London. Ferguson responds with her daughter's travel schedules. Royal analysts say this crosses a deeply troubling boundary, sharing logistics about young royals with a convicted sex offender. Princess Beatrice was 21 in 2010. Princess Eugenie was 19, turning 20. Both were young women navigating adulthood under extraordinary public scrutiny. The documents show their mother discussing their whereabouts, their relationships, even intimate details about their personal lives with Epstein. There's no evidence the princesses had any direct contact with Epstein, and both have maintained dignified silence on their mother's past associations. Today, both are married, philanthropic, and have worked to distance themselves from the controversies that plagued their parents. But these revelations put them back in an unwanted spotlight, forcing questions about what their mother's judgment or lack thereof exposed them to during their formative years. Royal commentators say this may be the most damaging aspect of the document release, the generational trauma of association. So where does the threat claim come from? Ferguson's current representatives say certain emails were written under duress, with Epstein leveraging her financial desperation and threatening to expose embarrassing information. But critics point out that many of the affectionate emails predate any known threats. The "Just Marry Me" message from January 2010 came before the PR pressure campaign documented in later correspondence. Legal experts reviewing the documents say Ferguson's defense may be an attempt to reframe willing association as coerced cooperation. The distinction matters enormously, both legally and in the court of public opinion. Was she a victim of Epstein's manipulation, or a willing participant who maintained the relationship for financial gain? The documents suggest it may be both. And that complexity is what makes this story so troubling. When People magazine contacted Sarah Ferguson's representatives for comment, they declined. Buckingham Palace did not respond to requests for comment. Prince Andrew, through his legal team, has maintained he had no knowledge of Epstein's crimes during their friendship. The royal family has gone into full defensive mode, the same strategy they've employed for years: silence, distance, and hope that the news cycle moves on. But with 3 million documents now public, and investigators still combing through the archive, this story is far from over. More revelations may be coming. And for Sarah Ferguson, the past she tried to bury is now her present reality. The Jeffrey Epstein scandal has always been about more than one man. It's about power, complicity, and the structures that protected him. Sarah Ferguson's story adds another layer: desperation, judgment, and the choices people make when they're drowning. Was she threatened? Probably. Was she complicit? The evidence suggests yes. Can both be true? That's the question that makes this story so devastating. As more documents emerge, we'll continue to investigate, because the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, deserves to be told. This is Hollywood Uncovered, and the story continues to unfold.